Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to make a video about this car, my own Porsche 911 992. This particular model is a C4S convertible or cabriolet, depending on which country you live in and what you call it. So I made a video about the Ferrari and all the issues I had with it, and it got quite a lot of attention. So I thought I should make one and talk to you about not just the good things but also the bad things about the 911. They're very good all-rounders. When you compare them to other sports cars, they're really good. But of course, like every car, they have issues. So what we'll do is we'll go through the outside first and talk about what's good and bad, and then we'll go through the inside and then the technology and the engine and all those issues. Not all those issues, but whatever issues there are. So first of all, the thing at the front is this lower lip. The car has enough clearance, but when you go over speed bumps, you have to be really careful, because if you press the brake, which forces the front of the car to dip down, this will always hit. And people say, oh, you should get a nose lift, like £1,500 or whatever, £2,000 to get the nose lift in a car that's supposed to be an everyday car. A bit of a pain. That whole plastic piece, Porsche say, is a consumable item. Therefore, when it's damaged, you replace it. Other than that, from the front, I can't see anything wrong with this car that I would complain and moan about. Overall, it's a very classic look, and I like the shape of the car and the way it sits. It's very understated. So overall, the front, no issues to complain about, happy with it. Now coming to the side of the car, as you know, I'm a big believer in having these normal wheels. People like to have those GTS wheels which are central locking, but if you are a daily driver of a Porsche, you use it as your main car, or even if you use it as a nice car that you drive very frequently but you're not parking it in a garage, then you should not get central locking wheels. Everywhere where I've been around Europe traveling, even Switzerland and Germany, you always find issues that if you have a flat tire, if you want your wheels balanced, you can't get this done if you have central locking wheels, because most garages don't have the tools or the torque wrench to do that. So it's very important to remember that if you have a car that you're going to use on a regular basis, then you shouldn't get center locking wheels. They say it's from the sports heritage and blah blah blah, but seriously, how many of us are going to use that car solely for track use? If you only use it for track, then yes, you can have central locking wheels. But again, how often are you going to go do a pit stop and someone's going to take all your four wheels and replace them with something else? Never going to happen. The thing that I don't like about this car are those two big exhausts. And I prefer the quad exhausts that you get with the cars that don't have a sports exhaust. So you don't have a choice. You can't choose the normal quad exhausts because they look more classy, and I prefer the old-fashioned look. This one, I'm not sure, but I have to live with it. I've debadged the car and removed all the badges because, you know, 911s have way too many badges on the back. So especially this one was a C4S, so it had way too many stickers and things. Overall, as you can see, the stance of the car, the way it sits on the ground, those big, huge curves over the wheel arches, the whole design is absolutely beautiful. They've done a very good job at creating this car and keeping the classic look of a Porsche very recognizable when you're driving around. From the side, again, no complaints. I like the curves, the shape of the car. The wheels are quite nice, perhaps a bit too big, but I guess they complement the big wheel arches and the shape of the car, so you just have to live with it. It just means you pay a lot more when you have to replace the tires because they're far more expensive than smaller tires. Starting from the outside, if you look at this handle, it's not a very comfortable handle because once it's closed, there's not enough space to put your finger under it, so you have to really shove your finger underneath and then you have to open it. It makes it quite hard to get in. It's not a comfortable feeling. Same thing with this handle. When you're opening it, it's tight and it's not plastic, or it is plastic but feels like aluminium, and your fingers, because it's so tight, they feel like they're going to get caught in it. Then you move into the driving position. And here I am sitting exactly with the camera in front of my eyes, looking at the dashboard. As you can see, I can't see these corner dials on either side, and even the bigger ones I can partially see them, so I have to move my head from side to side like that to see those dials, and that shouldn't be the case because you should be focusing on driving rather than looking at the dials and trying to see what's there. I'm also not a big fan of this touch system and this new console where they've taken away the buttons. After you've owned the car for a little while, you know where all the buttons are, and even at night you don't need to look at them. You can just touch them and you feel them and you know which one you're trying to press. But this thing, you always have to look because sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. This is the navigation system, or the PCM, Porsche Communication Management. So right now, because the car was already running and it hadn't done a complete standby or go into a shutdown mode, when I switched on the ignition, these things came up. If it was a while that I hadn't started the car, then start, stop, sports exhaust, these drive modes and many other features would not be there until the whole PCM system boots up. It's a bit slow and it's a bit annoying. And those poor customers who bought the garage opener would have to sit in their garage inhaling the fumes for a while until the system loads up and they can press the button to open the garage. I didn't choose that option. Let's talk about the sat-nav unit. Porsche talk about this in all their adverts and say how amazing it is and all that. It's much, much better than their previous versions, but it's nothing extraordinary. It's not out of this world, and it has a few major problems. So when I say major problems, I'm not joking. It is a big problem. So basically, you cannot download the latest maps from the sat-nav directly, even if you're connected to a Wi-Fi, even though they sell you and tell you that that's doable. And I'll tell you what and how. The second thing is, you can't go and buy the maps like you used to be able to in the old Porsches, where you'd buy a DVD and then you put that DVD in and it would give you the latest maps. It was very expensive, but at least you could update the maps. So I was driving around Germany, Switzerland, France, and my maps are from 2019, when the car was manufactured. There are no maps from the latest period except for the one in London, which is from 2022. And when I complained to Porsche, they told me, oh, it's because you can only update 3 regions every year. So basically, I can only have 3 map updates every year for 3 regions. And like the UK is divided into several regions, so I can only get the map updates for my own zone. If you're traveling around Europe, you can forget about using this sat-nav because it is so old and so out of date that I was getting lost all the time, and I had to revert to using Apple Maps because the built-in sat-nav, even though it's integrated and it has all these features and things, it wasn't working. Speed limits, it's supposed to know what the speed limits are because of the map updates. I thought it would connect to their back-end server and get the updates like most other units do these days. No. Porsche doesn't do that. So after several emails back and forth to the headquarters and complaining about this, they said, oh, contact your local service garage, they might be able to help. So I contacted them, and the guy said, well, I'm sorry that you're facing this problem, but it is very strange, we don't understand this ourselves. But if you bring it in, I can update it using our main computer to whatever the latest maps I have, but there's nothing I can do to help you get latest updates for the whole of Europe, which is what I need, because when I'm traveling around Europe, I can't rely on a 2-year-old map, and that is a major problem with this sat nav. And for a car that costs 125,000, 130,000 pounds, it's ridiculous that they don't provide you with the option to even pay and update the maps, let alone it should be free, because I'm already paying for a subscription or several subscriptions to use this. So there is a subscription for the sat nav, there's a subscription for the remote, there's another subscription for data or apps or whatever, and you end up paying so much money per year to get these services working on this, but it doesn't do a sat nav update. So that really annoyed the hell out of me. Okay, so let's look at the sat nav unit. This one hidden feature that I found is very useful, and I think it's not listed in their books, so you might find it useful as well. If you do that, you can flick between various options on this little side screen, and here you can see what you want, what you prefer, what, like, various options. I keep it in this drive mode because I want to be able to use the stop start and the sports exhaust as and when I need. But also you can put this sat nav screen on that side if you're using Apple CarPlay, so then you can use your music here and you can still have the sat nav on that side, which is quite useful. So other than that, it has this feature to use data. So you have an embedded SIM card, and you have to pay, I think, £19 a month for 9 gigabytes of data, which is very expensive. But if you want to use your own phone and tether it, when you click on this, it asks you to switch off the embedded SIM card, which is pointless and annoying, because basically you can either use the embedded one or this. But if you use the embedded one, it's very expensive. If you use the tethered one, then it disables the embedded SIM card, and then you lose the real-time traffic information on your sat nav unless your phone is always connected. So that is a bit of a pain. So the roof opens and closes in 14 seconds up to 50 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour, which is fantastic, because in a country like England where it could suddenly start raining, you have the option to just slow down or open and close as you're driving, which wasn't possible in the Ferrari. You had to stop. You had to come to a complete stop. So that was a bit of a nightmare, because if you're driving down a busy road, you would be pissing off all the traffic behind you by doing that. I made another video about this, but I removed the rear seats in my car, and I have put little cushions for my dog. But removing the rear seats gave me at least this much extra space on the base of the car, which means that if someone is sitting there, they have more headroom. Obviously, you can't carry passengers in the back seats because they're so tiny. It's only if it's an emergency, you want to give someone a quick lift to something. And in those cases, you can just let them sit either on a cushion or you can let them sit on the carpet. It's no big deal. It's not that uncomfortable if you're just going for 15-20 minutes. At least they have more headroom and they can sit straight. If you're not as fussy about cars like me, then you can remove the rear seats. No big deal. As with all the other YouTubers have complained about this, I will also complain that this little shaver is very ridiculous. It's very uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like you're changing gears. You get used to it eventually, but it just feels very weird when you're touching it. I don't know, it's just very uncomfortable feeling.